In this tutorial we're going to look at adding your own sounds to a game level. Previously we looked at using some sounds out of the existing packages, and we selected them and we right clicked and we added them to an ambient sound simple. But now we're going to look at how to import your own sounds into those packages and add them to your own level. You can see here I'm using one of the empty template levels, which is just an empty warehouse. It just makes us the speed of testing things out and building and going around much faster than using the whole kind of massive game audio tutorial level itself. I'm going to be using Adobe Audition for some audio editing, just because I'm used to it and it'll be a little bit faster. The book itself contains a number of tutorials in the appendices using Audacity, which is a nice little free audio editor. So looking for firstly a basic room tone for this area, and quite liked that computer fan we used before, so I'm gonna use that again. Now I've deliberately broken this example so that it illustrates what you'll typically get when you take a recording of a sound and you're trying to make a kind of looping room tone, and that is this. Okay, you can hear every time it loops round there's a slight audible click. Now clicks are produced by sudden changes in volume, and so we want to get rid of that obviously because we want it to loop nicely. If we look zoom into our waveform, we can see that there's this red line, and that's called the zero crossing point. So the volume of the waveform at that point is actually 0. So if we make sure that our waveform at the beginning is at a 0 crossing and at the end is at a 0 crossing, then in theory we're not going to have that large jump in volume that's causing that click. So I'm just using some keyboard shortcut keys, and you can just see the left hand selection changing, and what it's doing is it's skipping between 0 crossing points. And I'll just try that on the right hand side as well, and we'll see if that works. That seems to have worked, so I'm going to just trim that. And it's always important to look away from the screen, particularly when you're dealing with loops, because you can, by watching what's going on the screen, you can get a false impression that actually something is sounding a bit too loopy or there's some kind of problem with the sound. The key is, if you're looking away from the screen and just listening, can you hear it loop? Okay, so that sounds okay to me. Now the other thing is that we bang on a lot about in chapter 2 of the book is that all the sounds in your game have got to fit into a fairly limited amount of memory. So with each individual sound that we're going to import into our game, it's important that we look and we consider each one of them in terms of its file size. And the one easy way to get a file to be much smaller is to look at its sample rate. Now at the moment this one is at 32k, so it's 32 kilohertz sample rate, which is not kind of full CD quality, but it's still reasonably high, and that's appropriate because it's got quite a lot of top end to it. That high end hiss, you kind of need that sample rate to recreate that. But I'm thinking for this large warehouse sound that we could perhaps filter a bit of that off, and that would also allow us to drop the sample rate a bit. So I'm going to go into a filter, and I'm just going to try pulling the top end down a bit and just see how that sounds. Okay, so here's without, and here's with. So obviously it's affecting the sound quite a lot, but it's also making it sound a bit more distant, and it's probably going to work better for that large warehouse than the kind of close-up. If I was right next to a machine or something, that the close-up version would work, but I think we can get away with filtering that down. And consequently, we don't need as much of that top end anymore. So I'm going to resample it, and I think I can put it down to 16K quite happily without any kind of great effect on the sound. So that's width, that's at 16K, and I've just reverted to 32. And I'll just redo that. Doesn't want to redo it. Okay, I'll do it. I'll redo it by hand. There we go. Okay, so now that's ready for importing into the game. So I'm just going to alter the file name. It's been edited. I'm going to call it E. So we go back to UDK, and we're going to create a new package to import that sound into. So I'm going to press import, and I'm going to go and find my sound, which is part of the GAT library here, and it's in the mechanical section, and it's that one. And it's going to ask me where I want to put it. Now I don't want to put it in the existing GAT A sound package. I'm going to keep that naming convention, so it's GAT and it's A for audio, but I'm going to call it, create a new package called video tutorials. I'm not going to bother with creating subgroups at the moment because I'm only going to have a few sounds in here. So I'm just going to click OK. And then you can see we've got a new package called video tutorials. What I'm going to do straight away is save that into the packages folder so that everything's being kept in the same place. So here we go. Packages, and there's our folder, and there's our sound. Okay, now we do exactly the way we did earlier. We got the sound selected in the content browser, we right click on our level, and we choose the ambient sound simple template using that sound. And then if we go to the top down view, you can see I'm going to use these widgets to move it around, and it should cover that whole area. So if we now real time, you can hear it panning around, which we want to avoid for room tones, so we can turn off the spatialize and we make it a little bit quieter. Okay, and then we have a warehouse with some kind of feel to it. Now we're going to use ambient sound simples in a more localized way for a piece of machinery that might be in this warehouse. So let's find a nice graphic that we can use, a nice static mesh. Now I'm going to change my views so I can actually see what they look like. And you can see in the filter I had sound wave data selected, and that's not actually what I'm looking for. I'm looking for static meshes, so if I turn that on, then I can only see static meshes that have come up under that named filter. And there's one. I'm just going to click it, drag and drop into my level, and there it is. Okay, I might want to make it a bit smaller, so I'm going to use the space bar to move between the widgets, make it a bit smaller. Okay, so now we need a sound for that machine, and it's got a kind of pulsating element to it. So let's just turn that off for the moment, go back to our audio editor and find another sound. So what have we got? What about one of these? Okay, one of these oscillating sounds has got a nice kind of movement to it. Might work with those lights. You can see from the waveform it's actually quite a repetitive sound. So again, I probably don't need that whole thing. I might even be able to select a short section like that. there's a slight click in there, but we'll tidy that up in a minute. And I probably just need that. Okay, that actually got rid of the click at the same time, so that's nice. Let's check the sample rate and see what effect it has if we just bring that down to, let's try 16 again to see what that does. Perfectly acceptable. Let's just try 11k. Right, a bit of graininess at the top end there if we do that. So if I was going to do that, I might filter off the top end first before resampling it. But it's such a short sample that for the time being, I'm just going to actually leave that and save it. Okay, so now we need to import that. And we're going to import it into our video tutorials package. Click import. That's the one. Open. Yes, everything's fine there. So there we have it. Right click. Ambient sound simple. Now you can see the default size of it is far too large because I just want to hear it around that machine. So I'm going to go in, change these settings to, that's probably a bit small, but let's see, something like that. If we zoom down or have a look there, we can see that we're just going to hear that sound around that machine. So if I make that a little bit bigger, so it encompasses where the machine is, and then we've got a bit of a fall off around a slightly larger area. Okay, and then I was about to click play, which wouldn't have worked because I haven't yet saved my package. Got to remember to do that. Right, here we are. And you see that's got spatialize on it because it's coming from a point source, so it makes sense. The max is too small. Didn't want to do that. Right, the max of that sound is too small, so if I make sure that I've got it selected here, I can actually use the widget to resize the maximum radius. So it's, you know, of a machine like that, you'd probably be able to hear it over a much greater distance. So let's try that. Okay, so importing sounds and adding them to your level as ambient sound simples. Now, next we're going to move on to actually how we might interact with those sounds, and we'll do that in the next tutorial.